Language learning sucks. Here's why. So what I'm going to address in this video is I'm not just going to rant about why language learning is bad. I'm actually going to give you the tools to make language learning more enjoyable. And of course, we first need to address basically why language learning is actually kind of frustrating a lot of the time. So the first thing we're going to talk about is this little diagram I've drawn here. So here's you. Here's your desire, which is basically to speak a foreign language. I've just drawn some random Russian letters there if you're puzzling over what I've actually drawn. And then, of course, because you have this desire, you take action, which is you attempt to do the required task. And I put like some headphones and book for the kind of things you might be doing. Here's the actual problem. This is what it actually looks like. You don't just have a desire to speak a foreign language that you take action on. There's all these other things as well. So if we've got demotivated, which is you don't feel like doing it half the time. I put a cross in between desire and taking action and an arrow to demotivated because demotivation is basically stopping you from taking action. And then, of course, you have... Why is the bottom of the screen up? That needs to disappear real quick before I kill someone. I've got uninformed down the bottom. Basically, you don't know what to do to make progress is also getting in the way of you actually making progress. And then, of course, both of these things result in your progress stalling, which results in you not making any progress towards your desire, which basically results in you being unhappy. Hence the sad face I've drawn over here. And that is basically why language learning is so difficult and why it sucks half the time. But that's all well and good. How do we actually fix this problem? Well, there's two real things we need to fix, and those are the two things I've put in red. So demotivated and uninformed. The way we fixed uninformed, which I think is the best thing to tackle first, is basically to understand what progression blindness is. So I have already talked about this before, but if you're new to the channel, first of all, subscribe. But progression blindness is basically the idea that if you are learning something, a lot of the time you don't actually know what you need to do to make progress in it. So an example is obviously language learning. Even though you have learned a language before, that doesn't really count because you did it in a different way. So when you're learning a language, for example, Italian, French, whatever, you don't actually really know what is required to become better at the language, and that is often causes like a lot of anxiety and stress. I know for me personally, and I know a lot of people are also like this, is they're kind of worried that, is what I'm doing wasting my time? Is it actually productive? I don't want to feel like even if you're not actually paying for anything, like it's just frustrating, you know what I mean? To put time into something that doesn't get you a return. So my promise to you is that if you're in this position, as long as you're actually doing stuff, you are making progress, you are going up. And that's great. Hopefully that does relieve some stress that you think, okay, I'm doing the flashcards, I'm trying to learn this and that, I am actually getting better rather than get worse. But it's still not great to not really make that quick, that fast progress because you don't know what to do. So just my recommendation for beginners is to basically try and keep consistency in a few key habits. So watching a vlog with subtitles and concentrating on it. So you might not understand what's going on. That's fine. You will improve over time. If you can do that most days, you will actually make progress. And then trying to learn some new words with flashcards every week. For example, days, food, etc. We're not going to go fully into language learning habits you can do. I'll have a video pop up on the screen right now that you can check out afterwards. That is actually more going to go into what you can do to learn a language and make good progress. But yeah, the number one thing is to actually just make some kind of plan to know that you are doing things consistently and you are making progress in the language. But the takeaway is that as long as you are doing stuff, you will make progress. The second problem getting in the way is the fact that you're demotivated. So just if we go back to this really quickly, if we do fix the uninformed thing and you do know what you're doing, you're able to effectively take action. Now all that's left is the demotivated part, which of course, even if you do know what to do, what action to take to make progress, of course, if you're demotivated, you're not going to want to do it. So how do we address the problem of motivation? Why is the bottom of the screen? Surely someone can comment and tell me how to get rid of that. That's really annoying. But anyway, the problem of demotivation is basically that there's two types of motivation, right? Short-term motivation and long-term motivation. Short-term motivation is what you emotionally feel like right now. Long-term motivation is your long-term goal. For example, learning the language that you're learning. And the problem is that they don't actually match all the time. Just because your long-term motivation is to learn a language doesn't necessarily mean you're going to always feel like doing it in the short term. So the solution is basically to understand that your short-term motivation isn't actually on your side. What you emotionally feel like doing right now is not necessarily good for you, and it's definitely not always in line with your long-term emotions. We call that motivation asymmetry or something like that. So the solution is to use discipline to stay consistent. So even if you don't emotionally feel like doing stuff, you actually can still do a few key habits by effectively making yourself do them and understanding that doing these things, even though you don't feel like them, is actually going to bring you more fulfillment in the long term. It is a little bit difficult to build discipline. That's why I'll have another video pop up on the screen right now, and I'll link both in the description. This second video will be on actually building discipline, and I'd highly recommend you check it out. However, a final tip I will give you is using a habit tracker. So it's very easy to stay consistent, even if you're demotivated, if you have a habit tracker with a few key habits that you know are actually making you better in the language. So even if it's, doing one deck of flashcards every day, even if you don't feel like it, you can probably do that still. So yeah, I will also recommend, guys, if you are trying to learn a language, definitely check out the Language Learning Accelerator. It's my course, which I've put in the description. And yeah, thank you for watching. Definitely subscribe. I've got a link to my Discord as well, and have a good one.